The grandfather clock in the grand library of the Vance estate ticked with a heavy, agonizing rhythm, slicing through a suffocating silence that had been building for months. Outside, the midnight sky had broken open, unleashing a relentless torrential rain that lashed against the towering arched windows, blurring the distant glittering skyline of the city into streaks of cold, neon light. For 2 long years, Catherine had lived inside this gilded cage, masterfully playing the role of the perfect, elegant society wife to Liam Vance, a brilliant, fiercely protective tech and logistics magnate whose empire spanned continents. To the billionaires, politicians, and high society elites who frequented their corporate galas, Catherine was a charming, softly spoken asset, a beautiful fixture on the arm of a powerful man. But beneath the silk designer gowns, the diamond necklaces, and the practiced, serene smiles, Catherine's heart beat to a completely different, tactical rhythm. She was not a trophy wife. She was a lethally trained, independent recovery agent executing the most dangerous long-term extraction mission of her career. Her target wasn't a rival agency or a foreign cartel, it was Liam himself, or rather, a highly classified, stolen cyber weapon prototype hidden deep within the encrypted fortresses of his global servers. For 24 months, she had meticulously mapped his routines, memorized his security protocols, and slowly chipped away at the firewalls guarding the Vance tech mainframe, all while sharing his bed, his dinners, and his life. But somewhere along the line, the boundaries of the mission had begun to bleed. Every time Liam wrapped his strong arms around her in the dead of night, every time his fiercely protective gaze swept over her in a crowded room, a dangerous, aching warmth had threatened to compromise her armor. She had fallen in love with her target. Realizing that her emotions were on the verge of destroying her professional detachment, and believing she had finally copied the final terabyte of the prototype data without leaving a single trace, Catherine knew she had to vanish immediately. She couldn't risk staying until the mask slipped. Standing before his massive mahogany desk, her posture perfectly poised and her face a flawless, unreadable mask of detachment, she slowly slid a crisp, signed divorce agreement across the polished wood, watching it settle directly in front of him. Liam did not move for what felt like an eternity. The only sound in the room was the steady, thrumming roar of the rain outside. He sat under the dim, warm light of the desk lamp, his striking features carved from cold, hard stone, his intense dark eyes fixed on the papers before him. When he finally looked up, his gaze pierced through her, pinning her to the floor with a suffocating intensity. He didn't shout, he didn't demand answers, he simply leaned back, his voice dropping into a low, clipped growl that sent a cold shiver down her spine. He asked her if this was truly what she wanted, demanding that she look him dead in the eye and tell him she felt absolutely nothing after everything they had shared. Catherine felt a devastating ache tear through her chest, but she locked her jaw, forcing her voice to remain cool, flat, and entirely devoid of life. She told him that their arrangement had simply run its course, that the spark was gone, and that it was time to part ways before their manufactured domesticity turned into bitter resentment. A flash of raw, dangerous fury flickered in Liam's eyes, gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a terrifyingly calm, decisive aura. Without a single word of protest or a plea for reconciliation, he grabbed his heavy Mont-Blanc pen and signed the document with a sharp, violent stroke that nearly tore through the parchment. He didn't argue about asset division or spousal support. Instead, he reached into his breast pocket and slid a sleek, black titanium card across the desk, where it came to a stop right against the divorce papers. He told her it was a clean break, a $50 million parting gift, and warned her with a low, vibrating murmur never to look back, because if she did, she might not survive the man who came chasing after her. Clutching her single suitcase, Catherine turned her back on the only man she had ever truly loved and walked out of the estate, stepping straight into the freezing midnight rain, desperately trying to ignore the crushing weight pulling at her soul as the heavy oak doors clicked shut behind her. 3 weeks after wiping her digital footprint and shedding the identity of Catherine Vance, She had completely reclaimed her autonomy, retreating into the high-tech shadows of the city's financial district. Operating under her true name, she purchased a heavily fortified, multi-million-dollar luxury penthouse, utilizing her $50 million payout to install military-grade encryption grids, reinforced steel doors, and an isolated mainframe that severed her entirely from the grid. She was officially retired, free from the constant paranoia of the underground trade, yet the silence of her new sanctuary felt deafening. Sensing her friend's creeping isolation, Chloe, her longtime tech handler and the only person alive who knew the truth about her past, refused to let her wallow in the quiet aftermath of her broken marriage. Chloe forcefully dragged Catherine out into the neon-drenched belly of the city, bringing her to the Obsidian Vault, an ultra-exclusive, underground VIP lounge known as a playground for the incredibly wealthy and elite, buried beneath layers of biometric security and soundproofed walls. Inside the private, velvet-lined suite, loud, pulsing techno music throbbed through the floorboards, a heavy bass line that masked the hushed whispers of high society scandals. Chloe had gone completely above and beyond to celebrate Catherine's freedom, playfully hiring a curated lineup of striking, elite male models to cater to their every whim, serving vintage champagne on silver platters and setting up a high-stakes poker table in the center of the room. For the first time in years, Catherine felt her rigid, tactical guard begin to drop, the intoxicating atmosphere and Chloe's chaotic energy coaxing a genuine, dynamic laugh from her lips. She leaned back against the plush velvet sofa, a faint smile playing on her lips as one of the handsome models leaned in close, his smooth voice murmuring a compliment as he struck a lighter to offer her a flame, his hand lingering just a fraction of an inch from hers on the cushions. It felt normal, superficial, and entirely safe. But the illusion of safety lasted only a fraction of a second. Without warning, the pulsing music died into a high-pitched, screeching whine of feedback as the ambient golden lights of the VIP suite instantly flashed a violent, emergency red. Before Catherine could even reach for the compact carbon fiber blade hidden inside her sleeve, a deafening, metallic explosion echoed through the corridor as the pneumatic locks of the reinforced steel doors were completely overridden and blown inward, hitting the walls with a heavy, plaster-shattering crash. Billows of white tactical smoke poured into the luxurious suite, blinding the panicking models and forcing Chloe to drop her champagne glass, which shattered violently against the marble floor. Through the drifting haze stepped a figure that instantly made the entire room freeze under a heavy, suffocating aura of absolute authority and unhinged power. It was Liam Vance. He looked completely dangerous, his tailored gray suit missing its jacket, his silk tie loosened, and his dark hair slightly disheveled, as if he had torn through the city like a man possessed. His eyes burned with a raw, terrifyingly possessive fury as they locked onto Catherine, ignoring the heavily armed security guards who scrambled into the room, only to lower their weapons the moment they recognized the billionaire's face. Liam cut straight through the crowd like a predator tracking its prey, his heavy, measured footsteps echoing over the silence of the room. Before Catherine could even stand, he lunged forward, his powerful hands gripping her tightly by the waist and pulling her body flush against his chest with a force that knocked the breath from her lungs. One of the models, foolishly trying to maintain his professional bravado, took a step forward, stammering that it was a private suite and that it was a first-come, first-serve arrangement. Liam didn't even look at him. He simply tightened his iron grip around Catherine, his voice dropping into a low, lethal snarl as he warned the man that if he ever breathed in his wife's direction again, he would buy the entire modeling agency by midnight just to fire every employee into permanent legal bankruptcy. Before anyone could utter a word of protest, Liam effortlessly hoisted Catherine into his arms, ignoring her sharp gasps of anger, and carried her straight out of the ruined club into the freezing night. The moment the heavy, vacuum-sealed doors of Liam's armored SUV slammed shut, isolating them from the flashing lights of the city, Catherine didn't panic, cry, or scream. Her years of Black Ops training instantly took over. With a fluid, lightning-fast flick of her wrist, A hidden carbon fiber blade slipped from her sleeve into her palm, and she pressed the razor-sharp edge directly against the taut, pulsing vein of Liam's jawline. Her voice was sharp as ice, trembling with a mixture of adrenaline and fury as she demanded that he pull the vehicle over, reminding him fiercely that they were legally divorced and that he had absolutely no right to touch her, let alone abduct her from a private establishment. Liam didn't even flinch at the cold steel biting into his skin. His eyes remained fixed on the rain-slicked highway, his knuckles clicking white against the steering wheel as he accelerated deep into the financial district. He calmly told her to press the blade harder if she wanted to stop him, but revealed a truth that shattered her reality. They weren't divorced. He had personally paid a $3 million retainer to manufacture a permanent, high-level corporate block on the court's processing system, ensuring the paperwork would never be filed. She was still, and would always be, his wife. Catherine froze, slowly lowering the blade as a wave of confusion washed over her, her mind racing to calculate how a civilian billionaire could possess the tactical foresight to intercept a ghost asset. She demanded to know how he had tracked her through her encrypted signatures, but Liam merely let out a dark, humorless chuckle that vibrated through the quiet cabin of the SUV. He looked over at her, his voice dropping into an intense, quiet murmur as he revealed that he had known exactly who she was from the very day they met. He wasn't a blind target. He was fully aware that his brilliant, lethal wife had been extracting terabytes of encrypted data from his private servers between their dinner dates and anniversaries. The cyberweapon prototype she had spent 2 years hunting hadn't been stolen by him. It had been planted deep within his corporate network by a high-ranking traitor inside his own inner circle who wanted to frame Vance Tech for international treason. He had intentionally let her think her mission was a success so she would retire and step out of the line of fire, keeping her close for 2 years solely to use his immense resources to protect her from the shadows because he had fallen completely, irreversibly in love with her dangerous, brilliant mind. The SUV screeched to a violent halt inside the isolated concrete garage of Catherine's penthouse safehouse. Liam killed the engine, forced his way out of the car, and followed her up the private elevator, refusing to leave her side as they stepped into the wide, industrial living room. Standing just inches apart under the dim architectural lights, the cold, unyielding mask of the billionaire magnate completely melted away, leaving behind a raw, desperate vulnerability that Catherine had never seen before. He confessed that he hadn't signed those papers out of anger, but out of a desperate hope that she would be safe if she walked away from his collapsing empire. But the web of deception was far larger than either of them realized. A few nights later, seeking independent confirmation of Liam's claims, Catherine utilized her old high society clearance to attend a massive international tech expo at the convention center, hoping to intercept the traitor's data handoff. But as she moved down a secluded, dimly lit corridor near the exhibition vaults, the sharp, rhythmic clicking of designer heels echoed behind her, and she turned to find Victoria, Liam's ruthless chief operating officer and bitter, jilted ex-fiancée, standing in the shadows with a venomous, triumphant smile. Victoria stepped into the light, her voice a low, dripping hiss that echoed off the metallic walls of the empty corridor. She laughed at Catherine's legal confusion, whispering venomously that Liam had used her from the very beginning as nothing more than a highly competent piece of tactical bait. She claimed that Liam was currently fabricating a secondary digital data trail that would permanently frame Catherine's independent recovery agency for the international cyber theft, ensuring his own corporate market shares remained entirely untouched while she took the fall for a federal crime. Victoria warned her to run immediately and leave the country before the asset seizure teams locked her down, leaving Catherine standing alone in the quiet corridor, her mind spinning as the toxic seeds of doubt began to take root, wondering if the fiercely protective husband who had held her in his arms was just another layer of a masterful, corporate-grade deception. Driven by a chaotic storm of fury, confusion, and an agonizing fear that her entire marriage had been a carefully engineered lie, Catherine stormed out of the convention center into the neon-lit, rain-slicked streets of the night market. The air was thick with the scent of street food and the visual chaos of crowded stalls, but she saw none of it, her tactical mind trapped in a devastating loop of betrayal. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the noise of the crowd, shouting her name with a raw, frantic panic that she had never heard from the stoic billionaire. She turned to see Liam chasing her across the crowded avenue, his expensive suit soaked through by the downpour, his face deathly pale as he begged her to stop and listen to him, screaming over the roar of traffic that Victoria was the true traitor who had compromised the mainframes to sell the cyber weapon to the highest bidder on the black market. Before Catherine could even formulate a response, the sharp, high-pitched chirp of her encrypted tactical comm link echoed directly in her ear, overriding her external senses. It was Chloe. Her handler's voice was breaking, distorted by static and gasping through heavy, terrified tears as she begged for forgiveness. Chloe confessed that Victoria's private mercenary group had tracked down her safe house and taken her family hostage, forcing her under the threat of death to alter the server logs and plant the false data trail that implicated Catherine's agency. Chloe screamed into the mic that Liam was innocent, that he had been telling the truth the entire time, and warned Catherine that Victoria had ordered a scorched earth strike to eliminate them both right there in the open market streets. In that exact microsecond, a heavy, dark sedan with pitch-black tinted windows blew through a nearby red light, its engine roaring with a terrifying, mechanical whine as it accelerated at a lethal, predatory speed straight toward Catherine's blind spot. Liam didn't hesitate for a single fraction of a second. With a primal, deafening roar of her name that silenced the entire street, he lunged forward across the wet asphalt, throwing his entire body over hers with a violent, self-sacrificing force that pushed her clean out of the vehicle's trajectory. The heavy iron bumper of the sedan struck Liam with a sickening, resounding crunch of shifting metal and breaking bone, throwing his powerful frame several meters down the concrete street before the vehicle tore away into the darkness, its tires screaming against the wet pavement. Seeing the man who had commanded empires bleed out onto the cold, rain-washed pavement solely to preserve her life completely shattered the last of Catherine's emotional walls. The detached agent died, and the woman who loved him took her place. She let out a raw, agonizing scream, lunging across the asphalt to drop to her knees beside his broken, motionless body, her hands trembling violently as she pressed them against his chest to staunch the dark blood soaking through his torn shirt. Tears mingled with the rain on her face as she begged him not to dare close his eyes, screaming into the midnight air that she loved him, that she had always loved him, and imploring him to stay with her as the faint, distant wail of emergency sirens began to echo through the towering skyscrapers. The moment the ambulance rushed Liam into the high-stakes environment of the emergency room for surgeries to repair shattered ribs and severe internal bleeding, Catherine went completely, terrifyingly tactical. Sitting in the sterile, dimly lit hospital waiting room, the heavy scent of antiseptic filling her senses, she opened her encrypted military-grade tablet, her face hardening into an expression of lethal focus. The recovery agent was officially back online, and she had a debt to collect. Working with an aggressive, terrifying speed, her fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, unleashing a devastating digital counteroffensive that ripped through Victoria's private networks. Within 3 hours of relentless tracking, Catherine successfully breached Victoria's hidden offshore Cayman Island accounts, froze her international assets, intercepted the black market weapon transaction mid-transit, and rerouted the entire encrypted cyberweapon payload directly into Interpol's active tracking terminal. By exactly 5 a.m., as the first pale light of dawn began to touch the city, federal tactical teams breached the airport tarmac, arresting a stunned, ruined Victoria just as she attempted to board a non-scheduled private jet, completely neutralizing the threat to the Vance empire once and for all. 2 long, quiet weeks had passed since the chaos of the night market, allowing the dust to finally settle over the remnants of the fractured corporate empire. Liam had made a spectacular, resilient recovery, his fractured ribs healing under the care of top specialists until he was officially discharged from the private medical wing with a clean bill of health and an entirely cleared public name. Catherine returned to her fortified penthouse late one evening, her steps slow and heavy as she prepared to pack away her tactical gear, operational mainframes, and weapons cases for good, intending to leave the city to find a quiet life far away from the shadows of her past. But the moment her fingers touched the biometric lock of her front door, the automated security system didn't emit its usual electronic chime. Instead, the heavy steel door slid open into a realm of total, absolute darkness. As her boots crossed the threshold, a soft, warm golden light began to flicker on from the floor lamps, illuminating the wide, industrial loft section by section. Catherine gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth as she took in the breathtaking visual transformation of her cold, high-tech sanctuary. Covering every single square inch of the wide polished concrete floors, climbing up the exposed brick walls, and draping over the iron rafters were thousands upon thousands of deep midnight blue and rich, velvet crimson roses, filling the entire industrial penthouse with a sweet, intoxicating aroma that felt entirely decoupled from the harsh reality of the city below. Standing in the very center of this breathtaking floral ocean, looking incredibly handsome, rugged, and completely healed, was Liam Vance, dressed in a flawless, custom-tailored gray suit that matched the color of the storm clouds they had finally left behind. Liam took a slow, deliberate step toward her, his intense dark eyes shimmering with a pure, unadulterated adoration that completely melted the last remnants of her defensive armor. His deep voice vibrated through the quiet loft as he spoke, telling her that she had cleared his family name, protected his global empire, and conquered the darkest corners of the underground trade all on her own strength. But as he reached her side, the powerful billionaire did something that made her breath catch in her throat. He dropped carefully and elegantly down onto one knee, reaching into his pocket to open a sleek velvet box that revealed a breathtaking, multi-carat flawless diamond ring that caught the golden light like a constellation of fallen stars. "Look up at her," his voice thick with emotion. He confessed that he had absolutely no desire to run an international empire unless he was running it with her by his side as his absolute, undisputed equal, asking her with a raw, hopeful vulnerability if she would remarry him and end the lies for good. A brilliant, breathtakingly beautiful smile broke across Catherine's face, a genuine tear of joy slipping down her cheek as she dropped her tactical duffel bag to the floor, stepping right into his space to look down at the man who had bled to save her. She let out a soft, emotional laugh, her voice rich with an intense warmth as she told him she would accept on one very strict, non-negotiable condition. She wanted total, undisputed command of the entire global security division of Vance Tech from this day forward. Liam let out a breathless, euphoric laugh, tears of absolute relief and happiness pricking his eyes as he stood up, sweeping her clean off her feet and sliding the heavy diamond ring onto her finger. The orchestral weight of the moment seemed to swell around them as he pulled her body tight against his chest, crashing his lips onto hers in a fierce, passionate, and deeply sincere kiss that solidified their true, unbreakable alliance. The operations, the double lives, the corporate warfare, and the shadows were permanently gone. They had survived the crossfire, ending their long, dangerous journey in the brightest, most beautiful victory imaginable.